Hey guys, thanks for clicking on the related video. If you clicked on this video, then you more than likely are interested to find out about your soul's journey through all of the dimensions, not just the third, through the fifth or seventh or ninth or whatever one you want to talk about. So we're going to start from the first dimension. The first dimension is what we would call the primordial soup, aka the vast void, the nothingness that came before everything. My kids ask me all the time, hey, what came before like the source of everything? I'm like, well, here's what happened. They kind of sort of understand it, but they don't understand it. So if they don't understand it, maybe you will. Let's talk about existence before existence began. Prior to anything, there was the first dimension. In that first dimension, and we are talking about this from the very base level, okay? And I want to be I want to look at this not necessarily from the beginning of the first existence. I want to talk about this from the perspective of the beginning of a new solar system, a new star, a new creation, a new area that is being developed, if you will, from a macro cosmic level, okay? Because you can't control a star without having learned how to control the nothingness first, okay? So when we talk about the ascension of the soul, eventually you come to control stars and or solar systems and or galaxies and or universes, okay? Every single action that happens within the universe is controlled. It is learning how to control yourself that allows you to learn how to control at the level of the cosmos. So when we're talking about our ascension, our evolution as a soul, we're not just talking about what we're doing here on Earth. This is something your soul has done several times before. Every time your soul goes out, you experience existence in a way you've never experienced it before. You never do the same thing twice. Why would you? That's just silly. You go out and you explore different experiences. For example, if I decided in my reset period, which is what I call that, the reset period, the period that you go back to the one in order to figure out what you're going to do on the next experience, the next mission, the next journey, whatever you want to call it, okay? Because sometimes we experience just to experience. Sometimes we experience to train. Sometimes we experience to be the catalyst. Sometimes we experience to help. It just depends on what your particular soul mission is, your soul purpose, right? Not everybody wants to be a leader. Not everybody's meant to be leaders. Not everybody's meant to be a leader. Some people enjoy living as a shoulder to cry on. Some people enjoy living as a doctor in any lifetime, any existence. That's their particular soul journey. They could be trained in the medical arts from beginning of time until now. And their soul just learns that wisdom as it goes through different experiences in different lives. Maybe like in the ancient times, they started out as a medicine man, okay? And then, eventually ended up going to Harvard and becoming the best neurosurgeon in the entire world. It just depends on their particular soul journey, right? But we all start somewhere. The very first spark that sparked started in the void. Okay? So let's start the journey in the void. Okay? So, the 5 elements, the primordial soup. You've got fire. But it's not actually in the form of fire in this particular case. It's more like a static electricity. think of it like electrical storm. Controlled? No, not at all. Oh, a space storm. Okay, so you're thinking about like air feeding that fire. Okay, the air blows like a smoke because the fire is crackling. Blows a smoke around, moving that fire in any direction that it just so happens to blow. Okay? Then you have the water molecule, not formed, not connected, not combined, dousing this fire in specific areas, but not really dousing. What happens when water comes in contact with electricity? Yeah. Now add into that particles that could be formed, but not. They're very dense and heavy, pushing everything all around. And then you have the soul itself, unaware that it is the one that controls all of these elements, completely unaware, experiencing with no intention, unaware that its own feelings are what spark those electrical currents, that push those winds, that create those volatile reactions, and that sits heavily in the void. There are 12 cycles with 12 physical dimensions. Say physical for a reason. So there are 12 cycles, 12 zodiacs. 12 is the number. 12 universes. 12. Everything is in 12. But it's not actually 12. It's actually 14. But it's 12 physical. Okay? So when we're looking at I finally understand it fully, the math. That makes sense. It's awesome. I love it. Okay. All right. So when we're looking fully at the cycle, and we focus solely on your particular soul's cycle. Okay? If you were to trace it all the way back, trace your soul all the way back to the original origin of your soul, it comes from one source, right? That one source had a specific number of subsources. Okay, we'll call that the 0.99. You have the 1 and the 0.99. The one who is close enough to the one that can understand most of the one, but not quite all of the one, because the one holds all of the information, and nobody else can hold all of the information without absolute destruction. Because if you know the one, you become the one. Make sense? To know the one is to become the one. Then you are no longer the 99 because you are the one. Ultimate sacrifice, love. You sacrifice your soul in order to, because you love so much, you sacrifice your soul to become the one. Okay? This is the absolute ascension. At the first dimension, you have to learn. You have to grow. You have to understand. You have to remember your connection to the one, which is through the ether, aka the soul. When it is the expanse, the void, the primordial soup, it is not contained or come together into the form of a soul, because a soul is formless without control. Without control. because the soul would literally just be a part of the net, the web, the ether, in universal default mode without understanding its own existence and intentionally bringing in all of the elements to create, because it remembers that it is a creator. Bam. Okay, once it remembers that it is a creator, it starts to remember how to control. And then it starts into this cycle of 3 lessons for each element. Okay, once you pass those first 3 lessons, or the first 4 lessons for your base elements, then you can move on to the second. Okay, so think about day 1 or cycle 1 as your soul's reset period, meaning your soul is remembering what exactly it's supposed to do in the upcoming 12 days or 12 cycles. Okay, so it's remembering everything that it's supposed to do. So let's say you follow the astrology. Very hardcore. And at the beginning of every cycle, you're like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to look at all of the zodiacs and see what it is over the next 12 months that I can expect. That would be day 1. This would be the smart thing to do. If you have the need or the desire to plan ahead, not necessarily looking into the future, but plan ahead, meaning, okay, this is the lesson I'm going to be learning next month. Maybe I should start looking into the reasons and the pain and everything about that now. And then do what I was talking about and start doing the cycle, the moon cycle healing. You heal whatever it is according to that zodiac sign that you need to heal that month. And I'm not talking about going by the calendar, the Gregorian calendar, or the calendar that we consider to be the year here in the world. It is deceptive. It is meant to keep you in a cycle loop. It doesn't allow for that rest period. It doesn't allow for the reset. It doesn't allow for you the recalibration to lock in the lesson from the last cycle. It doesn't allow for that. So don't follow that. Follow the zodiac calendar. Okay? Follow the zodiac calendar. And then you go through, when you're following the zodiac calendar, you'll go through each of the elements in order throughout that year. Okay? So, again, based in the first dimension, that very first set of lessons is bringing into control those 4 elements. Okay? Because the soul now remembers that it is in charge. The ether has reestablished connection. Once it has reestablished connection, that's how it starts to learn how to control. It starts to learn that power without purpose is destruction. Okay? It starts to learn that density without form is a heavy weight, and it releases. It starts to learn that air without purpose, aka the pushing of energy, is useless. Air is communication. When we focus, that's when we are able to create. That is when we are able to do. When we focus our intention, that is when we are able to live by our purpose. And then the last is when we learn how to give while protecting the water. The water is so important. But you cannot master the water if you have not yet mastered the fire. This is your ultimate balance. These 2 are important. But these 2 will destroy each other. This is your divine masculine and your divine feminine in its rawest form. You cannot bring the divine feminine and the divine masculine together until you learn all of the 5 elements and learn what all of the 5 elements mean inside of you. You are not merely a soul. You are not merely a body. You are the 5 elements in form. That is you learning control at the first dimension. So, I know this may not seem like something that you should celebrate, but I think that you should. Sit down for a minute and imagine yourself in your meditative state as the primordial void. We hear the stories of the mythology, or whatever you want to call it, of the Sumerians who talked about Tiamat being created and then defeated by Marduk and all of that stuff, okay? But if we look at it not from the perspective of the creationist stories, for example, like the Greeks have their creationist story. The Druids had their creational story. Every pantheon has their creational story, but it usually starts out with the basis of the primordial. So these myths, as we've called them, they are early man's unevolved understanding of the ascension process. It was something that was not able to be understood here because of the evolutionary scale of the man at the time. Remember, there are 12 cycles in each dimension, okay? So just because we have an ability to understand it now doesn't mean, 10 cycles ago at a level 3.2, they were able to understand what exactly those beings that came from the sky were. They labeled them as gods because that was their understanding at the time. Things have happened since then, and the understanding of man has been hijacked in a way and stifled in another way, but just because we hit a glitch or a hiccup doesn't mean that we can't continue to evolve as a humanity. Now, I feel like the scales are tipping in the direction that allows for us to be able to release some of the older weights, the older dogma, if you will, that no longer serves, and allows us to lighten our weight as a collective to allow us to be able to move to the next level. The end of a cycle grants us a grace period, if you will, a period to correct and or readjust. After that readjustment, the realignment, the reweighing, the recalibration, whatever you want to call it, we have a reintegration period. We're going to be entering that reintegration period. We had the end of 2 13 cycles with the end of the with the Lionsgate portal that we were in the last 2 days and then today. Okay, so this is the end of a 13 13 13 cycle. Meaning at the 3rd dimensional level, the 1st dimensional cycle is over. The 2nd dimensional cycle is over. The 3rd dimensional cycle is over. Are we evolved enough to be able to go from the 3rd dimensional cycle completion, or will we have to repeat the 3rd dimensional cycle? That's why it's important to understand the dimensions. It's important to understand the dimensions because you're not just a human. Somewhere out there, you're a star. Somewhere out there, you're a planet. Somewhere out there, you could very well be an entire solar system, an entire galaxy. You could be a nebula, whatever it is. Understand that you are not just a 3rd dimensional human. And you've done this evolution, ascension kind of thing before. It's not a matter of learning, but remembering. You've done this at a cosmic level, even recently, as you're reascending from the third dimension. You didn't just pop in as a third dimensional being. You had to pop in as a first dimensional being, transcend the second dimension in order to become a third dimensional being. Even if you are a young soul and this is your first time doing this, you're already pretty experienced at how to transcend and how to find what it is you think you lost. That makes me remember the one guy from Hook. I think I lost my marbles. Can you help me find my marbles? Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I really hope it really opened your eyes to some stuff. I'm going to continue doing these videos on the dimensional ascensions, and I really hope that this opens your eyes to a lot. Because if you have the ability to control the primordial soup, why wouldn't you have the ability to control human emotions? Just remember, this has hijacked your ether connection. Don't let it hijack it anymore. This is necessary. It's your protective mechanism. Don't listen to anybody who says that you have, to completely erase the ego. The ego is your security system. It alerts you to physical dangers you may not be recognizing because you're, in la la land because you're too happy, right? I was explaining to my kids the other day, pain is actually your intuition, but it's your intuition being alerted by your ego. Your intuition wouldn't know that there's a problem deep inside of your ear unless it had a feeling. And that feeling is triggered by the brain in order for you to be able to recognize that there's an infection in your ear. So the ego is necessary. It's a matter of learning that it's not overwhelming and that this right here has control. If you can control the primordial version of yourself, why can't you control the egotistical version of yourself? The fear, the doubt, and the pain. Just saying.